Okay, good morning, everybody, and you're all very welcome along to the Marine Ireland Industry Network virtual event. And we would much prefer to be doing a real world face-to-face event, but unfortunately, the nature of COVID is such that we've got to do them virtually. We would hope to do a face-to-face event in Q4 of this year, but it will be before we'll be able to do a real live event. And of course, the nature of a network is that face-to-face events are always much more beneficial and work better than virtual. But there we are. That's the world we're in at the moment. So this is specifically focused on Galway. We decided to pick a geographic location and have a look at what was happening in the marine sector in that area. We picked Galway. For anybody who's not familiar with the network, and there may be people joining who perhaps don't know what we do please have a look at marine-ireland.ie, our website, which was launched back in January. And you will be able to see there what we're doing. We've got a directory of companies there. We now have 150 companies in that directory. We have a news section. We have an events section. We basically facilitate collaboration between Irish companies and Irish players in the marine industry sector in Ireland. So we make people aware of other companies, what their capabilities are, and so on. We also, through that website, provide a window for external buyers to have a look at Irish capability and get a better understanding. And that's increasingly important for things like offshore wind, where there will be significant players from overseas who will want to understand Irish capability and Irish skill sets in the marine sector. It's the network is supported jointly by Enterprise Ireland and the Marine Institute, but we do always say that this is not a Marine Institute website or network. It's not an Enterprise Ireland network. It is a network for the wider marine industry sector in Ireland, and by engaging with it and keeping it vibrant, that drives traffic to the website and gives companies exposure. So do please engage, visit the website. If you're not in the directory, do please join the directory. It's a very simple process to do that. The back office piece of the marine industry and Marine Ireland Industry Network is handled by Blue Eyes Marine, and I do have to give a shout out there to the team. Mairead, Aoife, Joe and John all provide the very unglamorous back office piece of keeping the website up to date and making stuff happen on the website, putting in the events, doing all that good heavy lifting behind the scenes. So major thank you to the guys there. So we also, by the way, we have a new facility on the website. We do have a jobs facility on there. So if you are looking for somebody in the marine sector with a particular skill set or capability, do feel free to put that job up on the website, and we'll get lots of exposure, and we get a lot of traffic on the website. Just on the logistics of this morning, I'm going to run through the program very quickly. I'm going to hand off in a minute to Turlock Rafferty from iHub, who will talk about the iHub facilities, and I would just say that the guys there are doing the technology piece behind all this. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you so much, guys. That's Michelle Lee and Turlock Rafferty, who are the people in iHub looking after us this morning. We then have we've had a quick look at, we're going to have a quick look at the big picture around Galway, what's happening. We're going to have Galway Port on. Brian Sheridan there will be talking about what they've been doing. You probably saw they had a major announcement yesterday. So Brian will be hopefully bringing us up to speed on that. We have Maureen Inu from Udaros, who will be talking about Park Namara. That's the new incubator space that Udaros are working on. They're also looking at Rossville. Potentially with a view to repurposing Rossville for additional areas of the marine sector, including offshore wind. We've got Fabio from the Marine Institute, who's going to be talking about an SBIR project they're doing around mapping seaweed around the coastline using the drone technology. We're also going to then have a quick look at innovation and research in Galway. So we have Deirdre Brophy from GMIT talking about what they're working on in the marine space, and Jimmy Goggins from MIIN talking about what they're working on. We then have 5 very quick snapshots of Galway-based companies who are doing some really innovative stuff in the marine space. We're going to have Rory Casey, who's actually based in iHub. Rory Woolell is the CEO of Atlantic Photonic Solutions, a company that's looking at using UV technology to treat sea lice in farm fish. So interesting one there for the aquaculture people. We're going to have John Breslin from Blue Wise Marine. John, well known to this parish. Blue Wise have rebranded and are looking to engage with the industry and they're providing new services and new capability. We got Finn Delaney from Geomara, seabed and survey capability, seabed mapping and survey capability. Finn will be giving us a briefing on what he's been doing. He's down in Foynes actually doing survey work at the moment. We've got Mark McKeague from Air Composites. They're doing some work on composite technology for blades for both, as I understand it, for turbine systems, both in tidal turbines and actually looking also at wind turbine systems. And finally, we're going to hear from Brian O'Keefe in Wood PLC. That company is our largest, actually, FDI company in the marine space. And the guys there have been, for many years, working in the oil and gas industry, specifically around risers and riser technology. But they are increasingly looking at offshore wind, and in particular floating offshore wind, and the type of mooring systems that would be required for that technology. So that's the lineup. Unfortunately, we don't have time in there for Q&A, but please do send in Q&A to our comment section, and we will get back to you if you have a specific question for any of the presenters. We'll get back to you subsequently, but we won't be able to do that this morning. The event is being recorded, so I do have to say that for GDPR reasons, but also to make you aware that if there's somebody who's interested in what we've been doing here this morning and wasn't able to attend, we will have a recording available subsequently for people, and we'll put that up on the website. And like I say, behind the technology behind all this is being managed by iHubs, and that's Michelle Lee and Turlock Rafferty. And thank you very much, guys, for doing that. And with that, that's a perfect transition over to Turlock, who will be telling us about iHubs and what they're doing. And he's a short video presentation as well there. So Turlock, I'm handing over to you.
Thanks, Liam, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of GMIT and the Innovation Hubs, I'd like to welcome you here to the Marine Ireland Industry Network in Galway event. We're very pleased to be able to facilitate this event today from our new Innovation Hubs building here in Galway. Just before I give a little presentation of the iHubs, I'd like to thank Enterprise Ireland, the Marine Institute, my fellow iHub team members, George McCourt and Michelle Lee, today's presenters, and of course our friends and member company, Blue Wise Marine, for this opportunity. As Lee mentioned, this morning's event will focus on innovative marine activities taking place in the Galway region. It will include opportunities in the marine sector, relevant R&D projects, and it'll have snapshots of 4 companies that are actively involved in the industry. So just a little bit of housekeeping before I give my presentation. I'll just ask everybody, if you're not presenting, if you could turn off your mic, that'll just prevent any echo. And as Liam said, if you've any Q&A, please by all means put it into the chat and we will get back to you. So for those of people who aren't familiar with the iHubs, I'd like to provide you with this short presentation. So the iHubs have been here in Galway in Mayo for the last 10 plus years. And what we do is basically we're essentially an incubator for startup companies. The majority of them are technology companies. Typically, they have an export focus, and usually they're developing some type of disruptive or innovative technology. So we have a number of different services that we provide. As you can see up here on the screen, we offer space. We can connect people with funding. This is West by Northwest, for instance, an angel meeting coming up pretty soon. We're fairly well connected with a lot of the VCs and angel investors in the West and also in Ireland and internationally. We do a lot of networking and events like the events today. So we can also connect you with people that are fairly well deeply embedded within each of the different sectors, and they can hopefully you can leverage those to help grow your business. As part of GMIT, we can introduce you to a number of different people with different levels of research expertise in a number of different domains. We have the Met Center here actually within the iHubs, and they can do things like 3D models, they can do visualization, and they can offer a number of different types of medical and engineering technology type services. There's a number of different resources as well in GMIT, as well as just ourselves and the iHub team, but you can have access to students and graduates in terms of interns, and we also have some master's and PhD programs as well. So if anybody's thinking of maybe doing an innovation voucher, or if you're looking to do an innovation partnership, we could facilitate that here. And if we can't do that, we also are a member of a technology gateway, which is an Enterprise Ireland program that spans all the IoTs across Ireland. So if we can't help you here in GMIT, we can maybe pass you on to some of our fellow institutes across the country. And that's essentially it in terms of the different types of supports. We run a number of different types of startup entrepreneurship programs. And one of those was New Frontiers. So Michelle, maybe if you go to the next slide, please. The New Frontiers program has been running now for quite a while. It's the Irish National Entrepreneurship Program for those that are thinking to set up business. It's funded by Enterprise Ireland. So particularly people that usually apply for these types of courses, usually there's an export focus in terms of the type of business that they have. There may be some IP, and we're looking for potentially for high potential startups. So companies that can maybe scale to about 10 people within 3 years, or they can generate a turnover of about €1 million. So this program is actually currently accepting applications at the moment for phase 1, and it's a 3-phase program. So phase 1 is the typical kind of business startup program where people can de-risk their business idea, and they can get a good feel if they think the idea or the solution that they have to solve a problem, does it have, I suppose, market credibility, and also can it scale, and can it actually also support the entrepreneur, and is it a high growth entity? So that would be phase 1. And then there's phase 2, which is funded, and people that get onto the phase 2 of the program, they would receive some form of a bursary. And also there's a phase 3, which is a more kind of a deeper kind of dive into the actual business. So phase 2 will be where basically we look at some areas of their business in terms of financing, maybe raising money, how to put pitches together, and also we connect with mentors as well. And then on phase 3, basically that's more of a kind of a deeper dive along the same lines as well. So the New Frontiers program is run out of both our hubs, the hub here in Galway, and we also have another hub as well on the Castlebar campus in Mayo. So it's the New Frontiers program. And as you can see here, one of our participants was Rory Casey, who's one of the speakers here this morning. And Rory set up a company called Atlantic Photonic Solutions. And he'll talk a little bit about that. But Rory, when he stepped off New Frontiers, he also went on to apply for the Seed Corn competition, which is a national competition. And he was fortunate to win the regional category. And then he actually went on and he won the national category as well. So that was massive, I suppose, a financial injection to his company, but also it was great in terms of recognition as well, in terms of what he was doing. And it gave him a lot of visibility to potential investors as well. So the other program we have then is called the Empower program. You go to the next slide, please, Michelle. And the Empower program is a program for female entrepreneurs. There's 2 different phases to the Empower program. One is called Empower Start, and the other one is Empower Growth. So Empower Start will be for female business people that wish to maybe, I suppose, dip their toe. They have a business idea and they want to basically look at maybe seeing, is this visible, this business idea, is it viable? And essentially what the START program usually takes place over about 10 weeks. And we normally have about 20 females that are selected to go onto that program. It's similar to New Frontiers in terms of phase 1, but there's a lot of more female types of supports that maybe females might need to try and get their business up and running. And then for women that already have an established business and they want to try and see if they can scale or maybe look at new markets, or they want to try and see how they can, I suppose, improve their business in some aspect or another, they can go on to the Empower Growth program. And Empower Growth, actually, the applications for that just closed there last Friday. But for any females that wish to get into maybe setting up their own business, I would encourage them to apply to the New Frontiers program. And you can do that by just visiting our website, which is gmit.ie/New Frontiers. You can get all the details there, and you can apply. Our own website for the iHubs is just gmit.ihubs.ie. So now I'm just going to finish off with just a short video just on the iHubs itself, so you can get an idea of the facility here we have in Galway. And I'd just like to wish everybody an enjoyable event this morning. So thanks very much for your time.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Turlock. So that's iHubs there, providing incubation space, and we're doing the techniques first this morning. So we're now moving on to, I suppose, the big picture of what's happening around Galway, and we're going to start straight away with Brian Sheridan from Galway Port. Big announcement there yesterday. People may have seen it in the news. Brian, handing over to you. The floor is yours, sir.
Thanks, Liam. 10 minutes is pretty snappy slot to try and cover, because we have a lot to talk about in Galway. And while it's always very exciting here to work in the port, it's particularly exciting in the last month or so, and yesterday with all the news that we had to announce. It's great to see John Breslin there, from formerly of Smart Bay, sitting in the virtual wings with a raft of experience that he brings to bear, and under the new banner of Blue Eyes Marine. And I, as a former board member of Smart Bay, I know that John is well poised to be the dude to grow and develop offshore renewable energy projects. The first slide you see there, thanks Michelle, the first slide you see there is just an overview of the port, built in 1840. They had vision. This has sustained the city for 180 years, and in 1585 Galway was the busiest port after London and Bristol. So just think about that, the busiest port after London and Bristol in 1585. So we hope to get back to those kind of figures and that kind of space again. But in that photograph you can see a large land bank, 17 acres, which the port owns, and this is what was announced yesterday for the visionary development going forward once the port has been developed. The port currently is surrounded on 3 flanks by residential, commercial. The Harbour Hotel is there. Bonham Quay, which was the site you might remember during the Volvo Ocean Race, was the race village. We sold that site in 2016, and Bonham Quay is primarily an office development, is at a very advanced stage in the port estate. So the face of the harbour is already begin to change. The second slide, Michelle, it's just a normal day in the port. There's 2 ships in, one unloaded logs from Scotland for the Murray Timber Group, that are based in Ballygar, and the other vessel loading limestone from a quarry in Cong on the Galway-Mayo border, used in the glassmaking industry and exporting approximately 60,000 tonnes a year, going to the Nordic countries and in the glassmaking industry. The 1996 Harbours Act gives us the legislative framework to be able to operate and manage the port as a semi-state company, which is approximately 40% of our core business. The rest made up of the real estate, which is owned by the port, and a significant income from car parking. The next slide, Michelle, shows what is in the planning stage. And approximately 3 weeks ago, we did get very strong positive news from Bord Pleanála. They have written to Minister O'Brien indicating they are of a mind to grant the planning permission for the port expansion in Galway under Article 6.4 of the Habitats Directive. And this is the first time this type of legislation has been pushed forward. We are blazing a trail, pioneering the legislation and probably doing the country a great service by testing this legislation, because it's all new to Bord Pleanála, certainly new to ourselves. And I am hearing in the wings that other applications in the marine space are put on hold while the outcome of the Galway application is determined. So future piers and harbours and slipways and what have you in special areas of conservation, I think, are on pause until the planning comes through. So it's 20 years in the making. First sketches scribbled on the back of a cigarette packet, as it were, and it has grew, eventually lodging in 2014 with the oral hearing in 2015. So it's been a long road. You can see there it will deliver 660 metres of quay at depths of -12 metres. So in really good position for the deployment of offshore renewable energy devices into the future. In 2019, the environmental compensatory measures were submitted as part of the application, where you put your toe in the water of an SAC, you must give back what you take, and that has been finally agreed with Bord Pleanála and the National Parks and Wildlife Service. Final decision, we are fingers and toes crossed. We are hopeful at the end of the year that we will have an indicator. There may be another public consultation period in relation to the environmental compensation, and but yet we don't know. So we're in the lap of the gods in terms of that part of the process. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's going to copper fasten and future-proof Galway as a maritime city into the future. And while in 1840 they got 180 years out of the port, I'm mindful that we will have delivered the same. In the next slide, Michelle, this is here and now, Marine Technology Hub. We have kept this site 15,500 square meters, which is approximately 3.8 acres, and we've held that in reserve for what we believe, and we've held it there for a number of years, for a Marine Technology Hub. And it's right overlooking the waterfront, so a very nice location in the city centre, and we see that as an area of when offshore renewable energy is rolled out, the O&M operations and maintenance base for offshore wind can happen here, and also for fledgling startups in the marine technology space, whatever that may be. So we are holding that in reserve for that as it comes down the road. The next slide, Michelle, is an interesting one in terms of communications. You'll see the number of cables primarily coming from the USA to Europe, the AEC, America-Europe connector, as it's called. And a number of years ago, we embarked on getting planning for a cable landing station at the port. That's been approved. And the survey was done by the Riley Thomas last year from Iceland to Galway. And in 22, we hope to see the cable laid. It's going to bring a broadband speed 16 million times faster than what we have in the city currently, which is 53 terabytes a second, incredible data speeds. And on that, from that discussions, another cable from Bilbao and Portugal. So essentially that will connect Galway, hardwired Galway to the Far East through Lisbon, Marseille, and then to the Middle East. And it will allow a backhaul communication network for the likes of Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, and an access into the European Union now that GB is a third country and the transfer of data over third countries is a no-no. So now you will be able to have high-speed data connectivity into Europe being handled through the port. And we see that as a key piece of infrastructure and moving on the agenda in Galway, and particularly for the marine. The next slide, Michelle. I'm very conscious of my 10 minutes. We've all seen this slide, so I won't dilly-dally on it, other than to say that, you know, we are adjacent to the best and the highest quality wind energy in Europe, between Sline Head and Achill Head, just round the corner from the port. And so we are clearly looking forward into the future as Galway being a hub for renewable energy. The next slide, Michelle. This is what was launched yesterday. This the area in blue there is the 17 acres of land that the port owns right in the city centre. And we're not property developers. We're in the business of running ports, and but we are facilitating this and realising that valuable asset to pay for the port expansion, because, as you know, we're a semi-state company. We don't get any state aid. We're standalone. We operate and maintain and plan for the future of our own balance sheet. So we are using this asset, which will fund the new port, as I've mentioned earlier. The city, as it is, Galway, really has nowhere to expand but to the water's edge and southwards, and the port estate offers the city that great opportunity, because the population of Galway is to grow by 40% in the next 20 years. So
sorry, Brian, grow. 1 minute to finish, please.
Thanks, Liam. It must grow in some direction, and that is towards the port. Michelle, the next slide. This is just a graphic of what may be, and there's a website there for the public to have their view at galway-harbour.com. And the next slide, Michelle, policy context. Alignment is a great word, and you'll hear us talking about alignment a lot, because there's more and more alignment of what we are trying to do in terms of the new port and the vision lands in the port estate through the Galway 2020 plan and the rollout and the development of the 4 other regional cities to create a counterbalance to Dublin. And Michelle, on the next slide, I'll touch on 10T. Galway is not in the 10T network, but we are moving in that direction. That map will show you clearly there is a gap of 1,500 kilometres between Foynes in the 10T and Derry in the 10T. And I drew that map up before Brexit. So now Derry is gone from the European Union. So the west coast of Ireland, it's pretty stark that we don't have a 10T in the European network of ports. So we're working pretty hard to get Galway into the comprehensive network. And the last slide, Michelle, you will see, just as a comparison for 10T, similar country of Denmark, similar population, 22 ports in the network, and Ireland has 5. So clearly there is something wrong there. And we hope to put Galway, and we're making strides in that area to get Galway back into the European network for the west coast of Ireland. The matrix of tonnage as a measure of how effective ports are doing we believe is incorrect. And if you were to consider a port handling 5 million tons of coal, flies in the face of the EU Green Deal and the Climate Action Plan, if you compare it to a port who is engaged in renewable and offshore energy. So and that's what the 10T was all based around, was all about tonnage. And clearly that's wrong. And I'm glad to report that we're getting some traction on that. So to finish up, the port is open for business for the people in the marine sector, and I'd be delighted to take calls offline and in the wings with anybody to talk, particularly in the area of offshore renewable wind. Thanks very much, Liam.
That's great. Thank you very much, Brian. Yeah, we'll certainly keep an eye on that Marine Technology Hub. We would be very happy to see the progress on that. Somebody seems to be sharing their their email screen. Whoever is doing that might take it down, please. We're moving on to Udaros, Park Namara. Moira Nienu is going to tell us about the Park Namara project, and also what's happening around Rossaveel. Udaros are looking at Rossaveel. Moira, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Liam. Michelle, if you can just pull the slides up there, that would be great. So, fáilte háirde to today's session, August, as Liam mentioned, is Mission Mara Ainu, Marine Development Executive with Údarás an Gaeltachta. So the overall objective of Údarás is to ensure that the Irish language remains the main spoken language of the Gaeltacht and is passed on to future generations. So we do this by funding and fostering a wide range of enterprise development and job creation initiatives, and by supporting strategic language, cultural and community-based activities. We provide financial incentives in the form of grant aid and non-financial incentives such as leases on our property portfolio. The Gaeltacht region actually accounts for 25% of the overall coastline, but to us, over 85% of the Gaeltacht is on the coastline, and as such, when we're devising and implementing strategy and development strategies, the marine resource is considered key to the creation of employment opportunities. So for us, new innovations and successful businesses will come from those who have considered the sustainable development goals and are finding ways to alleviate gaps in the markets. It's about Unpobble, our community, Unchéad Glúnella, the next generation, Achmani Nádara, natural resources, Fostiacht, employment, and Sunscadal, the industry. So what are the opportunities in Galway? Well, there are loads, anything ranging from fish to marine renewable energy. Adding value to our resources such as fish and seaweed can in turn promote development in the pharmaceutical and nutraceutical sector, with endless opportunities for natural-based products, be it bone graft substrates, supplements to assist diabetes, to bioplastics, with staff needed from all different backgrounds. Marine tech, and we have some great companies like Air Composites who will be presenting later today, who are already operating in this field in the Galway Gaeltacht. But what about software development that can further assist sustainable development in aquaculture and marine services, such as sensors maybe that can predict an algae bloom? Michelle, please. So I actually came across this image on the Icelandic Ocean cluster, and it really portrays what we're trying to say here today. Getting as much value from a species is key. So let's not just gut fish anymore. Let's make calcium from their bones, cod roes, to oil, and collagen for human skin. Completing this whole picture requires the potential for waste, and byproducts should also be investigated, with particular emphasis on opportunities for circular economy initiatives, essentially reducing waste to a minimum or zero. And seaweed, again, let's aim for zero waste. But did you know that seaweed can be used for materials for clothing and or fuel such as biochar? There are already some great companies operating in the Galway Gaeltacht, but seaweed aquaculture will need to accelerate to meet demand for both carbon capture and to aid in reducing methane. A diet that contains small amount of seaweed will reduce methane emission from belching cows by 82%. And I even read this morning that the same red species of seaweed has been found by a scientist at University of Sunshine Coast in Australia to quadruple the immune response of farmed fish by adding this to their feed. So needless to say, a picture paints 1,000 words, and this global atlas just shows us just how appropriate the West Coast is for wind energy development. So we at Údarás, as Leah mentioned, has just hired a group of consultants to look at Rossaveel as a strategic hub for the development and support of the offshore wind industry on the west coast of Ireland. Next, Michelle. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Rossaveel, the port is actually located at the northern entrance to Galway Bay, providing a strategically close access point to offshore wind facilities at the mid-west coast of Ireland, from Loophead in the south to Balmullet in the north, with the clear possibilities to serve ports further afield. Planning permission was granted to DAFM to build a deepwater quay in 2018, and Údarás actually owns a significant land bank, approximately 20 acres, which is just adjacent to the proposed quay wall. So there's a wide range of activities within the development of the offshore wind sector, which will be required, including substantial manufacturing of elements from turbines, blades, foundations, to assembly of foundations, turbines, towers, preparation, assembly of moorings. There'll also be requirements for operations and maintenance services and support services during both construction and operation. But Russellville won't act alone. We're hoping to act as a linkage between Galway, Foynes, Killybegs, all acting as this cluster. Although down the line, initial thom, now is the time to act. And speaking of clusters, a word that is used more and more recently, Galway is home to an international significant cluster of ICT businesses and creative industry businesses, along with a highly educated, skilled workforce due to NUIG, GMIT, and GRETB. But let's bring these all together and show them the benefits of cross-business and cross-sectoral collaborations that could help drive the marine industry in Galway. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with our Portnamara initiative. We believe that through the development of Portnamara, we will drive innovation by creating a platform for cross-business and cross-sectoral collaborations and connecting people with different backgrounds, skills, and perspectives. These initiatives will facilitate technical development, translating R&D potential into new products and new international markets. They will generate new spin-off companies and support the overall growth of local SMEs in the marine and renewable sectors. The Portnamara site itself is actually 18 acres, and it'll give access to high quality seawater and fresh water and direct road access with the seafaring community. And within the vicinity, we've got already a high quality of marine cluster. So we went out for expressions of interest in 2018. And just from that, and using basic multipliers, we predict 200 direct jobs on site, 400 indirect jobs, approximately 30 million public sector investment, and between 30 to 50 million private sector investment. So basically, in summary, we're hoping that Portnamara will act as a strategic hub for the future development of the industry. So again, in 2018, along with our partners in NUIG and GMIT, we won 2 million in REDF funding for a cornerstone facility on Portnamara, a Marine Innovation and Development Centre, or the MIDC as we're calling it. And while we're still at planning stage, we're currently recruiting for an MIDC manager to manage and accelerate the work on developing the pipeline and support companies in the immediate short term in the local GTECs, either as digital innovation hubs. So the manager will provide business advice to clients and to enterprise trading in the marine sector across all Gaeltacht regions. So with the emphasis on remote working, it is worth noting that Údarás has a large network of technology hubs across the country and are open for business if you're looking for a seat. So there's absolutely no point talking about opportunities without looking at community acceptance. To me, community participation and acceptance is key in any development, and really the earlier their involvement, the better. Working on marine sector development, I quickly seen, acceptance was quite high, but there was no significant or scientific evidence to show this or to deny it. So as an accountant, facts and figures are extremely important to me. So I quickly undertook some work under the watchful eye of Professor Stephen Hines of CIMRO. To
1 minute to finish, please, Moira.
To understand and overcome public concerns, and conducted surveys in Connemara where respondents were asked about their attitudes towards aquaculture and other behaviours such as employment, governance institutions, marine spatial planning, but results were really interesting. For example, aquaculture on average will be accepted up to high intensities in these waters, and this activity can coexist with other marine related activities such as tourism, seaweed harvesting, renewable energy, but forget about seabed mining. So really, the earlier you start talking to your stakeholders, the better. So I know we rushed and I only touched on a few topics, and I could really talk all day about marine sector opportunities. So please get in touch with me or our director, Mark White, who'll be more than happy to assist, make connections, and if we can, try and draw you to the Gaeltacht. Your mahagi.
Thank you very much, Marie. Brilliant. Yeah, great to see the Portnamara Incubation Centre progressing. One of the really interesting pieces there, I think, is that is a facility which is specifically designed for the marine industry. And like Marie says, we'll have things like seawater feeds, freshwater feeds, and so on. So really interesting development there. Great to see it. Right, let's move on. We have Fabio Sacchetti from MIIN Institute now. He's going to talk about a SBIR project that they are working on. Just for anybody who isn't familiar with SBIR, this is to be honest with you, a much underutilized support scheme that Enterprise Ireland runs. It is available to public sector bodies who want to look for a particular technology or capability that they feel doesn't exist at the moment, or they find it very difficult to source. And Enterprise Ireland has supports around that. And what it does is it allows that public body to go out to the private sector and look for innovations or capability to solve this particular issue that the public body has. Get in touch with me or with wider Enterprise Ireland if you're a public entity and you have a particular technology or solution you're looking for. Like I say, SBIR is much underutilized. So with that, handing over to Fabio. Fabio, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Liam, and thanks everybody for being here. And thanks, Marie, for introducing the topic of seaweed, which is the core of this presentation. If Michelle, I can have the slide up. That would be great. Thank you very much. Okay, so I will just briefly introduce you to the SBIR project and challenge that we have been managing in the MIIN Institute with Enterprise Ireland, and I will talk a little bit about the companies that have been involved in this process and they're currently working on it. So if I can get the next slide, please. So just to put that in context, the seaweed cultivation market globally, it's about 11 to 14 billion in value in 2020, but it is projected to really grow very quickly in the next couple of decades to 60 billion in 2040. And while this is a Asian dominated market, really, there are players in Ireland, in Europe that play a part. Ireland is actually the third highest producer in Europe, behind Norway and France, and on average, every year about 20 to 40,000 tons of seaweed are harvested in Ireland. The difference is that the Irish seaweed, it is actually wild seaweed, so it's probably of better value, and it is used, as previously mentioned by Marie, on many products, from cosmetics to pharmaceutical, human, animal food. But the reality is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Every year we see new uses, and as mentioned before, on carbon sequestration, for example. So it is a hot topic, and it is important to do it properly. In Ireland, there is about 150 to 300 harvesters at the moment. Some are just local families, small groups harvesting the local beach, but there is also some relatively big harvesters on the West Coast. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, as the industry grows and the level of harvesting grows, it is also important that this is done in a sustainable way, because seaweed, if you've been to Connemara, you know what I'm talking about. Seaweed grows in marine protected areas, in special area conservations. They are key habitats for many species. So the sustainability must underpin the licensing regime for the harvesting. And also a sound scientific advice is required, in particular around the topic of how much seaweed there is and how much seaweed you can take annually without distressing, without harming the environment. Next slide, please. So this is all in relation to policy. This all came to play really a few years ago when seaweed was well documented in the National Marine Planning report. The MIIN Institute actually was challenged and tasked with a few things, a few important topics, trying to understand the methodology, the high-tech methodology required to assess the biomass of seaweed and the species of seaweed around the country, and also trying to better understand the socioeconomic aspect around it. The MIIN Institute actually started a little bit before 2018. We commissioned a PhD study that lasted 4 years that looked at the methodology, the technical methodology to assess the seaweed around the country, and also looked at who can actually do it in the commercial world. And one of the results was that there is no company in Ireland or UK that is specialized in seaweed mapping. Yes, there are groups, mostly marine biology or seaweed experts, that can go around the country with kayaks, boats, or on the beach, take pictures, measure with rulers, but really you need to think bigger, expand, and have a solution that can look at the bigger picture, do it quickly, do it accurately. So then we went back, we looked at more funding, we secured funding through the European Marine Fisheries Fund, and we also engaged with Enterprise Ireland, trying to take advantage of the SBIR mechanism, as Leon mentioned. Next slide, please, Michelle. So Leon already touched on this. The SBIR actually means Small Business Innovation Research, and it is basically a pre-commercial procurement where enables organizations like the Marine Institutes to basically stimulate innovation when there is no solution currently available in the market. And there are different stages, different funding stages, and selection and evaluation stages that make sure that it's kind of a risk management that makes sure that the best companies get the funding. And the important thing to mention is that the companies actually will retain the IP of their software or hardware solution so that they can commercialize it once the SBIR is concluded. Next slide, please. So in specific on our own challenge in the Marine Institute, it reads like this. Basically, it's the development of a technology-focused data acquisition, processing, and analytical solution capable of delivering a rapid and cost-effective intertidal species-level seaweed distribution assessment at a regional scale. And I put in bold the important keywords. It has to be a rapid, it has to be economically viable. You need to be able to actually do a survey that gives information about each important species, okay? Not just, yes, there is seaweed, no, there is no seaweed. You need to know the species that are there, and it has to be scalable to a regional or national level. Next slide, please. Michelle, thank you. So I have to mention this, it's funded 50-50, Enterprise Ireland with 150K and the Marine Institute through the EMFF funding scheme with another 150K. It is managed by the Marine Institute, in particular by the Advanced Mapping Service Group where I work, which is funded by the Department of Communication Climate Action through the Infomar project, okay? Next slide, please. So just to go to the companies that are actually currently working on this. Last year, we launched the tender around Q1, Q2 last year, and 7 groups applied. We selected the best 3, which got into phase 1, which was a small capital investment. They did a case study, and the 3 partnership that were awarded was the AAT group. So AAT is the leading partner, but so AAT is a company that specialized in drone, fixed-wing drone remote sensing using multispectral imaging. They are a spin-off company of Carlo Institute of Technology in Carlo. So they partnered with Carlo itself as their business development partner, and also they joined with the Aran Island Seaweed, which is a small harvesting company in the Aran Island. If you notice in this slide, I put little red asterisks to highlight the companies or the groups that are on the Galway region. And the other partnership is the Fathom partnership. So Fathom it's a company, it's a software house company based in Dublin, actually. They specialize in all things about cloud computing, software development, big data crunching algorithms. And they joined forces with the 2 groups in NUAG, actually, the group, the Rhine Institute, and also the group of high-end computing in NUAG, and also their commercial on-the-field partner is Aramaratillo, which probably you all know. It's they're based in Connemara on the west coast, and they probably are the biggest seaweed harvesters in the country. The third consortia that applied and was awarded was the one led by Techwork Marine, which is a marine company based in Dublin. They specialize on all sorts of things, providing services and products to the marine sector, from oceanography to remote sensing. They were the leading partner, but they joined up with GeoAerospace, which is a spin-off company of National University of Maynooth. And GeoAerospace, their specialty is really aerial surveys, remote sensing surveys using drones, airplanes, and customer-based data delivery systems.
1 minute to finish, please, Fabio.
They also had, thank you, a partner in Galway with the Department of Botany. Next slide, please. So AAT and TechWork solution, as I said, is based on combining drone surveys with aircraft surveys to do the detailed surveys, combined with the satellite remote sensing, a lot of data crunching on cloud-based solutions, and also the field-based ground truthing. Next slide, please. The Fathom solution is relatively different. It's quite different. Is a software solution embedded in an Amazon cloud system. So there's a lot of IT and modeling infrastructure in here that is going to be developed. They grab the best images available from the satellite, and they can model and forecast the seaweed distribution in any specific area. So it's very transferable anywhere else in the world as well. Next slide, please. Of the three consortia, two went forward. The AAT and the Fathom consortia went forward to the phase 2, where we are now. They are getting the contract sorted at the moment. And they're really looking at now for the next 8 to 9 months at the scalability, the platform development, the market analysis, and the commercialization, with the hope to have a final product, a final solution available for tender, for example, for next year. And the last slide, please. So really, while the companies at the moment are focusing on cracking the solutions, joining drones with satellite, with cloud computing, once that they have developed their infrastructure in the context of seaweed, they can really expand this kind of data analytics potential to anything else related to the coastal environment, for example. And as mentioned before, it could be, applied to renewable energy development, to pollution, to monitoring migration of species, or algal bloom monitoring, both in Ireland and abroad. So 10 minutes, a lot of slides. That's pretty much me done for now. If you have any other question, my contacts are on the next slide, or you can contact me at the Marine Institute.
That's great, Fabio. Thank you very much for that. Very interesting point there around the use of that IoT, ICT, comms, communications capability nationally. That's certainly something that we're seeing as well in the offshore wind industry, where there's a real demand for that capability, and Ireland has good strengths in that area. So it's great to see those being marinized. Around the SBIR, that is an important point, that the IP generated in those projects actually rests with the SMEs involved. So that's a crucial point. Well spoken there. Okay, let's move on to innovation and research. We're going to look at GMIT first, and then NUIG, and they're going to showcase some of what they've been working on for us on the marine sector. So going to GMIT first, Deirdre Brophy. Deirdre, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Liam. You can see my screen there. Yeah. Okay, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the work that we're doing in the Marine and Freshwater Research Centre in GMIT, and hopefully there'll be some aspects here that might be relevant to some of the things that you're working on yourselves. Oh. Is my screen showing properly there?
Yes, yeah. We've got
okay.
our slide up, Deirdre.
Deirdre, it's my slides that are showing.
Okay, sorry, I just stopped that. Yeah, okay, so the group comprises 22 academic staff from GMIT, around 15 contract researchers, over 30 research postgraduates, and then every year as well we have project students, undergraduate and MSc project students who spend a few months in the MFRC. Next slide there, please. Some of the facilities that we have in the centre, there's a dedicated research facility, laboratory and office space. There's molecular and proteomics laboratories, cell culturing and microbiology facilities, analytical chemistry facilities. So there's an environmental chemistry lab, including mass spectrometry, HPLC, and FTIR spectroscopy as well. We're set up for histology and image analysis. And we also have Ireland's only land-based HPRA authorised marine recirculation facility for holding fish. And then we also have some field equipment, bioacoustic monitoring equipment. I'll come on to some of the work that we do with that shortly. And drone equipment as well that we use for sampling and surveying populations. Next slide, please. So the focus of our research, it's very diverse. Our projects span a range of different topics, but the three themes that they all fit under are enabling sustainability, conserving biodiversity, and improving productivity. So our researchers are helping to ensure the sustainable management of fisheries and their ecosystems by collecting, analysing and interpreting data. We're helping to conserve biodiversity by assessing the response of aquatic species to human impacts and environmental stresses. And we're working with industry to develop innovative technologies to improving productivity in the seafood sector. So I'll give you kind of a flavour of the projects that we're working on, but it's really just a very brief snapshot. Next slide there, please. You can find out a bit more about our projects on the website, mfrc-gmit.ie. So just some examples. We're currently working with BIM to develop vaccines against amoebic gill disease for use in aquaculture. We also are involved in a number of projects through EU funding programs to develop new aquaculture species and products. So for example, Colin Hannon has been working on sea urchins and alternative products from sea urchins. We're also working with BIM and the fishing industry to test fishing net designs and to test their effectiveness for reducing unwanted catches. So that's contributing to the implementation of the discard ban in Ireland. Other researchers are looking at environmental contaminants and pollutants in water and in animal materials, like seabird eggs, for example, and in synthetic materials as well. So there are applications there to environmental health, to conservation, and also there's industrial applications, and there are companies who use analytical equipment, use our analytical equipment to look for contaminants in synthetic materials. Some of our researchers have been using drone technologies and developing new methods based on drones to sample water, for example, or to census populations. Ian O'Connor and others have been using drone technology to census seabird populations. And there is, they have been working with wind energy companies on that as well, where there's an interest to map the species that are using areas where there's overlap with planned wind energy facilities. And finally, then the centre is very well known for the work that we do on whales and dolphins and other marine mammals. And we are part of an EU Interreg project that is building a network of stations for monitoring marine animals of a range of different taxonomic groups. And our group are using acoustic techniques to monitor the distribution and habitat use of whales, dolphins and porpoises. So we are working with companies there on the development of these acoustic technologies as well. Next slide, please. So our funding is coming from a range of different national and international sources. We get a lot of our funding from the Marine Institute, from the EPA, and from government departments. We're also working with companies, with wind energy companies, and we're working with BIM as well. And then increasingly we're getting funding from international sources, from EU programs. And a lot of our projects involve international collaboration and are part of EU funding programs. Next slide, please. And we've seen a lot of growth in our funding base over the last 5 years. And we're also seeing steady growth in the number of researchers who are leading these research grants. So this is reflecting expansion in the MFRC in the range of different things that we're doing as well. So the total value of projects currently in the centre is 5.5 million, and then on top of that, then there's additional funding for PhD fellowships that isn't captured in that. Next slide, please. And then just looking at the links with taught programs in GMIT, originally our research programs were linked to our programs in the marine and freshwater biology area. So a lot of the work kind of arose from that. But as the group has expanded and as more staff have started to link in with the group, we're also linking in with taught programs in agriculture and environmental management, and biology and biopharmaceutical science, medical science, forensic science and analysis, and also the diploma in biopharmaceutical science. So this connects us to students on these programs that have a very diverse range of different skills and interests. And I think that's well suited to developing kind of small scale projects or pilot projects if companies want to use an innovation voucher or work with, you know, to do something small and over a short time period. I think our students, our project students and placement students are well placed to do that. So there's scope there both for the large scale and small scale projects within the MFRC. Okay, next slide, please. So yeah, that's it. I draw your attention to our website where you can find out more about the researchers who are working in the centre and the various different projects. The examples I've given there are really just a very brief snapshot of what we're doing. Thanks very much.
Deirdre, thank you very much. That's great. Yeah, good point there around innovation vouchers and those other additional supports. They are readily available to companies. It's a great way of a company just starting to get to engage on the research space, and you know, sometimes companies are not 100% sure where to go or how to go about becoming more innovative, and the innovation voucher is a very handy way to start. That can lead on then to innovation partnerships and so on. So it's a good mechanism to start engagement there. So great, that's what's happening in GMIT. Encouraging you again, if you have any questions, get them into the Q&A and chat facilities and we will follow up on them. Like I say, we don't have the facility to be able to answer them at the moment because we're just, the timing is too tight for us. But now we're heading to NUIG, to Jamie Goggins, to hear what Jamie has for us on what's been happening in NUIG and the research capability there. Jamie, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Liam. Shall you going to share the slides?
Yes, we share the slides. Yep. You just say next slide, please.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. No, thanks for inviting me. So, yeah, loads and loads going on in the university. So all I'm going to have time to do is give a kind of snapshot of a few example projects, not just to show the capabilities, but just, I suppose, at the highlight, just to say, no, we love collaborating with industry on research innovation projects. Like myself at the moment, I have live projects involving about 50 companies, associations and research technology organisations and that. So about a quarter of those are in Ireland. Most of the rest of them are across Europe. Like I've helped secure more than 80 million euro worth of project funding in the last 10 years. And again, most of those projects are with industry. So just, you know, that's what we like doing. That's what we can see we can have big impact by working with industry and communities and so on. So just on the next slide. So we have, so I'm within the Ryan Institute. A lot of my research work goes on, and I'm also Director of Research Innovation in the School of Engineering. And one of the centres within the Ryan Institute is the Centre for Ocean Research and Exploration in there, with the mission to advance knowledge of ocean and its interactions with land, atmosphere and society through excellent interdisciplinary research in marine and coastal systems, embracing the UN SDGs in support of national and international strategic priorities. So, you know, a lot of the stuff we do, what's great about having like the Ryan Institute is it brings people from different disciplines together to, you know, to try and address a challenge that's there. We also have, you know, we're part of the SFI MARI Centre, SFI ICRAG and so on, but MARI and ICRAG in particular have a good footprint within the marine sector. The word cloud there with the fish is from the work that we do, that the group does, and you can see the main topic areas there. And of course, we're, you know, targeting, trying to fulfil the targets or help contribute to the targets under SDG 14, which is life below water. Next slide, please. So within that group, within the wider context, I suppose there's lots of our schools, our colleges, different disciplines working in this sector. So I'm going to kind of try and give a flavour from some of the different schools and sectors. we're a research-driven institution or a research-driven university. So there's masters and undergraduate programs that are at the back of some of this research work as well. Next slide, please. So the first example I'm given here is wave resources characterizations. This is done by Stephen Nash and colleagues in there. So basically created a standardized wave resource characterization for Galway Bay. So taking 10 years worth of data and been able to use a modeled wave data sets to characterize the wave resource at that site in it up to the European standards. So effectively, why would we do that? Well, very useful for a test site, for a wave energy test site, so that you can see what is the dominant periods and significant heights of that test site in there. And then, but also we've looked at different times of the year. So if you're going to be testing in Galway Bay in springtime or in autumn time, what does that mean? If you have a 3-month window, what does it mean for the overall life of it? And then what about if you want to design your wave energy converter for Galway Bay? What scale should you have it at if you did want to bring it up to the AMET's test site up in North Mayo after that? So we have a scaling there by looking at what periods of the year are you going to test for? Are you looking for extreme conditions or operation conditions and so on? Next slide, please. My core work, I suppose, is I'm a structural engineer. That's what I do. That's what I did before I came into the university. So I run this large structures test lab. So you see the picture there on the right, that's a 13-meter wind blade that was manufactured by Air Composites. So I know Mark is going to speak later on. And you see in the background, William Finnegan is there to just kind of show you the scale. Yes, so we're very advanced test facilities there. We'll just move on to the next slide. And over the last few years, we've been using it predominantly for testing tidal and offshore wind turbines. So we've done a couple of different projects with Shuttle Hydro, which is a German company. So that's a tidal energy device there that we've tested the blade to its 20-year equivalent life. So we do accelerated testing rather than waiting for 20 years or to see how long the blade will last in the water. We tested under accelerated loading in the lab. ORPC in the middle. So those foils on that, it's a river turbine. The foils are manufactured out in Connemara by Air Composites. We did some testing in our lab and then shipped off to Alaska, and they're now providing clean energy to Alaska, where they were reliant on diesel-powered machines after that. So we're just starting another project with them, a fast tactic innovation project to now incorporate recycled material into those blades in there. Open Hydro, we worked with them before they went burst. Orbital Marine Power, very interesting Scottish company. So they have a floating tidal device there. So you can see the yellow picture. They've just towed up their device up to the Orkney Islands, is ready for deployment up there as well. So it's a 2 megawatt device. Each of the arms going down into the water there have 1 megawatt turbine on it. The blade on the picture that we show there is in our test lab. We tested that, if you just want to go on to the next slide, please. We tested that last year in our lab. We tested under static load. So it's manufactured by Air Composites and then tested in our lab. So we put an equivalent of 100 tons load on it, which is equivalent of 10 double-decker buses on it. So it's the largest ever reported load on a tidal turbine blade. And then we tested to its equivalent 20-year life. So nobody has ever done this in the world before. So it's, we're definitely world leading in this area. We also have our own in-house software that we've developed that we actually design up these blades. We can do uncertainty analysis on them and so on. So we can definitely say we're world leading in that area. Next slide, please. Just shifting over then to my colleague Rory Monaghan, who's also in engineering, but also other colleagues like Paul Farrell, who's in chemistry, and Tom van Rensburg, who's in economics. So these guys are working on green hydrogen and value chains for the marine economy. So if you kind of look there at all those different projects that we've given up as examples, you see that most of them are with different communities. So they're either with island communities, which say the Aran Islands has been a replica island. We have Majorca there as a green hub. So it's all about green hydrogen in there. You have value chains in Ireland, the UK and Germany, so from GenCom. So they're kind of large projects mainly funded through the European Union in there. So there's a great opportunity here, for example, in Galway, where you have excess wind power from the Galway wind park in there. That then could be used to create green hydrogen at the port, and then that green hydrogen then could be used to power our buses and our trains locally within Galway. Next slide, please. So CIMRU was mentioned earlier. So Professor Stephen Hines, the Social Economic Marine Research Unit in the university, and that was established with the objective of expanding marine social economic research capabilities in Ireland. And I suppose they're best known for the Ireland's ocean economy report in there that's used at international, national, and regional levels in there. Next slide, please. Yeah, so it's, so I give a flavour of some engineering and science, some in terms of the economics side of things, and then I thought I'd pull out this one as another example where, you know, blue space for health and well-being. So, you know, the vast oceans or waters in there, you know, absolutely brilliant for health and well-being. So colleagues in there like Iski, Geisha, Christina and Katrina and so on are looking there at those spaces and investigating the links between our environment, our health, our well-being and social economic status. Next slide, please. Our, you know, one of the biggest groups, I suppose, in terms of research activity around the marine space comes from our School of Natural Science. And I've just pulled out a few examples here. But if we take, you know, sustainable management of marine bioresources there in there, so you know, looking at the biodiscovery, the biotechnology potential of marine organisms, especially looking at invertebrates like sponges, corals, algae, microalgae, cyanobacteria, and so on in there. And then we look at, you know, the impact of, say, climate change in there on our oceans, so acidification of our oceans, the effects of global change and on the physical and biological factors and driving distribution of different organisms and so on in there. So taking that into account and looking at the likes of evolution and ecology in there. Genetics is obviously very important. So if we're talking about seaweed, as mentioned earlier on, we look about high yield seaweed in there and the genetics behind that can make it more economically feasible and environmentally sustainable manner. But also, you know, we have huge resource off the west coast of Ireland in terms of the deep sea and exploring and conserving deep sea genetic resources. So I think, you know, our colleagues in the university in Galway are the largest users of the research sea vessels in there, going out doing lots of field studies. Obviously, sustainable fisheries, marine ecological restoration, and looking at the nitrogen dynamics and so on. And next slide, please.
1 minute to finish, please, Jamie.
Yep. If I look at my colleagues in the College of Arts and Humanities and School of Geography, across the wide range of work that's been done there, from coastal processes and landforms, you know, wave, wind and tide, coastal management strategies. So, for example, looking at our beaches, the sands, the dunes, and that, trying to understand the dynamics that's going on there, but then also trying to conserve and manage those, monitoring observation, you know, using things like Earth observation and GIS, marine spatial planning, biodiversity, and so on in there. Last slide. So that's kind of just a very quick run through. I mean, I could have put in loads and loads of other examples from different things, but just to kind of give a flavour. And I suppose we are open for, you know, anyone that's interested, give me a shout and I'll try and put you in contact with the right person in terms of who could help you in terms of your ideas or your need. Okay, thanks a lot.
Jamie, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Some really interesting stuff in there. Fully agree on the orbital power technology. That's a really interesting one. Headed up to Orkney to be tested up there at the moment. And great to see an Irish involvement in that project. You did mention Open Hydro there as well, and the fact that it was gone. And yes, that was a huge loss to us on the marine side. But I do think that out of that came two great companies that are now really innovative in the marine space in Ireland. X-Ocean, who everybody will know as that unmanned surface vessel technology. But we also have Dublin Offshore Consultants, who have a lot of skill sets that are very valuable for the offshore wind industry. So a lot happening in that space from the skill sets that came out of Open Hydro. Green hydrogen as well. Great. Yeah, great that you mentioned that. It's a very obvious fit with offshore wind and indeed onshore wind. And people will have seen that announcement just a couple of weeks back from ESB and Equinor around the repurposing of the Money Point site for both floating offshore wind and green hydrogen. So really, really interesting development there. Okay, we're going to move on to the companies now, and we're just doing quick 5-minute snapshots of companies and their capabilities and innovations they're working on. We're going to start with Rory Casey, who's actually there in iHub. Rory is CEO of Atlantic Photonic Solutions, and he's working on UV treatment of fish lice in farm salmon. Rory, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Liam. If you can bring up the slides there, please, Michelle. So Rory Casey is my name. I'm the founder and MD of APS. APS is Atlantic Photonic Solutions. So photonics is the science of light. So we engineer light to do things. And our first business case is to use light to remove parasites from hosts. And the first case is sea lice from farmed salmon. So the next slide, please, Michelle. So salmon farming, next slide, please. How important is it? Well, salmon are the feed conversion champions. So 1 kilo of salmon of feed produces 1 kilo of, it takes 10 kilos to produce 1 kilo of beef, 2 kilos of feed for 1 kilo of chicken, 1 for 1 salmon. So it's the most efficient. And if we look at space, to get 1 million kilos of beef, you need 3,500 hectares. To get 1 million kilos of salmon, you need 1.6 hectares of ocean. Of course, there's a 3-dimensional element there, but it just shows how efficient it is. So next slide, please. The problem with it is sea lice, and the sea lice are an ectoparasite. They breed very quickly. They have a short life cycle, depending on the water temperature. The females can lay up to 1,000 eggs. They damage the salmon, and the cost of the sea lice problem is about estimated as €1 billion per annum. Next slide, please. So our solution is photolyser. So we will pass the fish from the pen, pass them through our device, put on the lights, knock off the lice, and then pass them back in to the pen again. Next slide, please. So there are alternative treatments, obviously, with an industry that size. They sort of fall into the chemical, the mechanical, and the biological. So there's pros and cons for each of them. A lot of them damage the fish, which fish welfare is the main problem. The chemicals have also sort of reached their end game where the sea lice have built up a resistance to them. Next slide, please. So our journey so far, we started in 2018 with the initial idea, filed the patent, achieved proof of concept. We're now to the lab in Galway from the fish farms, bringing samples of lice to try and find the sweet spot wavelength. In November last year, we won the seed corn competition, and that allowed us then to do some fish trials. So we were able to prove that we don't damage the salmon. And then the end of last year, we got some EMFF funding, which has allowed us to kick on. So our funding journey started sort of, we've shaken pretty much every bush that's out there. So Southwest Mayo Leader Company, NUIG, helped us with innovation vouchers from Enterprise Ireland. I was on the New Frontiers program, which has started again. Turlock mentioned it, fantastic program, Tony O'Kelly. Then we did seed corn, which is really good preparation for the European pitch. And Údarás and Gaeltacht, and a big call out there to Sean O'Cuishtla and Mark White for their support from Údarás. So next slide, please. So we've gone from concept to prototype. So the first one there, the concept is a 4-lamp system, a lamp sort of north, south, east, west, and there's the prototype underneath. And then we moved quickly to an 8-lamp, and there's the 8-lamp prototype. So we're getting very good results. Next slide, please. Our team at the moment, we've got Kieran Guy and Laura on the photonics side. We've got Kevin Murphy on the validation scientist, John Gertie, Noreen, and myself. So next slide, please. So in summary, next slide, please. What we've got is a innovative fish-friendly technology that works. It's working. We're at a very small level. We're at 1 fish at the moment. We need to scale it up. We've identified a major problem in the global market. We've secured the IP. We've assembled a team, and we've got commercialization strategy and funding in place for the next 3 years. So we are ready to move up through the gears. That's it, I think. Thanks very much for your attention. And if you want to give me a shout, there's my details. I'm very interested in talking to anybody that wants to talk to me. Thank you.
Rory, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Really interesting project. Anybody who's in the aquaculture industry knows how big an issue fish lice are and how much they torment the industry. So any new technology in that space, I would imagine, would be very welcome. Let's move on to John Breslin. John, Blue Eyes Marine, well known to this parish. You have the floor, John. I don't have any sound from you, John. Okay, what we'll do, Michelle, is we'll let the guys there get sorted, and we might move on to Giomara and Finn Delaney, if that's okay. Can we, Finn, can you unmute and we might get Finn's slides up and we'll come back to John Breslin.
Okay here now.
Oh, are you? Okay, right, great. Sorry, I've confused everybody now. Finn.
Sorry, thanks, Liam. Thanks, everybody. Sorry about the delay.
Yeah, you're good.
You can hear me okay? Michelle, can you pull up the slides? Great stuff. So look, I just want to use the opportunity to introduce Blue Eyes Marine. You can pull up the next slide, Michelle. Most of you will know us as being Smart Bay Ireland. So just to explain, we transitioned to Blue Eyes Marine. We recognise the skills and experience that we've gained through managing the test site since 2012. And we wanted to diversify our activities. So we needed to rename the company away from the test site. We're still managing the and supporting the management of the test site, but we're also expanding our services. So what we're doing is we're helping developers of technology and project developers who want to install wind, wave, floating solar, tidal, airborne wind technologies to identify sites in Ireland and to help them with consenting. So we're helping basically to deliver blue economy projects in Ireland. Brian and others have mentioned there's a huge opportunity in Ireland as we start to look towards the marine to reach our net zero targets. And really there's an awful lot to working in the marine. And next slide, please. In terms of the harshness of the environment, the health and safety requirements. So we've got 4 principal services that we're offering. Marine infrastructure management, we're helping the Marine Institute and SCI with the Smart Bay test site and also the early stage groundwork for the Atlantic Marine Energy test site as well. We've got a range of support services for the offshore renewable energy industry. We support marketing engagement initiatives for government, and an example is our support, as Liam mentioned, for the Marine Ireland Industry Network, and then we provide funding support as well. Next slide, please, Michelle. So in terms of marine infrastructure management, I have a background in managing the National Research Vessel Fleet and managing multiple vessels in P&O. So what we did when we started running the test site is we established HSEQ, health, safety, environment and quality procedures. We've got accreditation under the 3 standards and we maintain that. We've developed standard operating procedures and access procedures for vessels and devices being deployed on the site. We've learned that community engagement is key, and that's something that's going to be very important as we start to develop projects, say fixed wind projects, floating wind projects, how we engage with communities and how we explain what we're doing. And for the test site, we're constantly updating the community via social media in terms of activities. Our community engagement coordinator, Joe, is based in Spiddle as well. We develop site access contracts. We select and we've worked on procedures for vetting vessels and dive companies. We undertake marketing and promotion and maintain a pipeline of developers of technologies. To date, we've coordinated and secured and delivered almost 80 projects at the test site, ranging from the larger 1.1 million, 1.5 million projects involving wave energy devices to smaller projects involving the deployment of connectors, coatings, materials, communication systems. We provide project management then when we secure those projects, and also we provide reporting as KPIs. Next slide, please, Michelle. So in terms of the offshore renewable energy industry, there's 2 elements of support. There's the developers of fixed wind farms, the utility companies, the project developers, and then there's the emerging technology developers. And again, there's similar types of supports because we're bringing the experience that we've gained through Smart Bay and running that. And again, we're helping developers identify suitable sites and select those sites. We'll coordinate resource assessment and environmental monitoring surveys. Again, we've experience with consenting and permitting. We're helping developers get consent for various projects. Public consultation and community engagement is a key factor as well. We're talking to developers about helping them develop ways of assessing fish stocks before, during and after wind farm installation. So again, to try and get an idea of what is the state of play with maybe it's a crab fishery or a lobster fishery or a finfish fishery before and during and after. And again, vessel selection. So we will engage vessels on behalf of our clients, make sure they're safe. We're working with our partners, AG and Marine MIIN who are on this call, those guys will be helping us to inspect and vet vessels as well. And again, HSEQ to ISO standards. Next slide, please, Michelle. So finally, then, the other area of support is we're working with particularly the emerging technology developers to actually identify suitable funding. Now, that could be grant funding, that could be debt funding, that could be equity funding. We've helped Simply Blue in the past with this, and we're pushing this service to other developers. And we will then help also build a consortium of correct partners or suitable partners. We're involved in a total of 16 European projects. So we have a big network around Europe of academics and industry partners. We will help with the writing of the proposal, the preparing of the grant application, and then coordinating the proposal and managing the project. We will use our extensive network, as I said. So listen, to finish off this presentation, I'd like to thank Turlock for hosting it. This is a fabulous facility. We're finding ourselves part of an innovation ecosystem here in the iHub, which is really, really excellent. We're working with Ian O'Connor and Deirdre Brophy and their team as well to look at the use of autonomous technologies for carrying out environmental monitoring. So by being, I suppose, present in the iHub, we have access to research in excellent state-of-the-art office facilities, but also research performers. And the last thing to say as well, we've just been awarded high potential startup status by Enterprise Ireland. So again, that puts us on the road to funding. We're applying for innovation vouchers. We'll move on to innovation partnerships, and we're looking at agile innovation funds. So watch this space. We're developing our website as well, which will go live quite shortly. And again, that will provide more information on our products and services. Thanks, Liam, and thanks everyone for listening.
That's great. Thank you, John. Great. So yeah, you can see the Blue Eyes Marine there repositioning themselves in the sector. Right, let's move on to GeoMara. Finn Delaney. Sorry, Finn, for almost throwing you under the bus there earlier. But let's hear what you've got.
Thanks, Lee. No problem. I suppose just to start with, next slide, please. We'll start with the second slide. Finn Delaney is my name. We have a small but growing high resolution services based here in Portfed in Galway. We've a growing team with 5 full-time staff now at this stage, with 5 full-time contractors as well. One of the things that we find we need to put a lot of effort into the training side of things, and so far this year we've had training from our software providers, QPS, in Quincy and Chimera, and Planix and SonarWiz, and also one of our surveyors has just finished his IHO Cat B training with Skill Trade in Holland. Next slide, please. What we do some hydrography, some geophysics. We also obviously get involved in the data processing side of things, and we do some small marine archaeology. Some of the nice pretty pictures around there. There's a water cable for Yorkshire Water up in the top right hand corner. It's simply just a bathymetric image, and down at the bottom left we have the turning circle down at Foynes. On the right hand side with the Olympus and Odom class submarine, which we found a side scan survey on the approaches to Valletta Harbour. So that's what we're into. Anything to do with hydrography or geophysics. So next slide, please. We own and operate our own full suite of survey equipment. So we have sub-bottom profilers, side scan sonars, magnetometers. But I suppose our workhorse is the multi-beam system. We have a state-of-the-art Reson T50. Next slide, please. Which has recently gotten an upgrade to 1024 beams, and all that means is we get higher hit counts and higher resolution. On the top right hand corner we have some backscatter which we get from the T50 as well as the bathymetry. So when you combine the two, you overlay the backscatter on top of the bathymetry data, you get a lovely 3D model of the sea surfaces, which is useful for many applications. One of the things we really wanted to push in 2020 here in GeoMara was using this really high quality point cloud data to a better extent for our clients. So we've developed an internet-based approach where in the bottom left-hand corner you can see our lovely point cloud XYZ data can be interrogated by our clients online without the need for big data transfers or expensive software. So next slide, please. So Brian Sheridan was talking about the IRIS cable that came into Galway Bay, which is due to come into Galway Bay. We were involved with the very near shore survey of that. We tied in with EGS from the 15 meters. We brought it right the way into Ballyloughlin, doing a full suite of MAG, sub-bottom, multi-beam and side scan surveys. Our PDS software allows us to do some seabed classification from the backscatter data out of our T50. So that's an automatically generated seabed classification of that very near shore bit just off Ballyloughlin Beach there. We find it really useful, and it's a nice innovative way of using our backscatter data. Next slide, please. So if you could just play the little video, Michelle. Hopefully the sound won't happen. We've recently acquired this Picotech 130 multi-beam system, which comes on its own catamaran. Here it is working for the Port of London Authority. And we're hoping to deploy it for very near shore surveys, lakes, harbours, rivers, and maybe some floodplain surveys as well. We're really looking forward to playing with it. We're hoping to throw it into Limerick Dock later this afternoon. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I must say, if we could go back to the Picotech, we also we received some funding from our local enterprise office here in Galway to support us in the purchase of that. Next slide, please. So again, the areas that we work in, ports and harbours, obviously, the likes of Foynes and Rosslare. We also do cable and pipeline surveys. Down the bottom left there, you see the from 15 meters into Ballyloughlin. That's the multi-beam data set that we collected towards the end of last summer in Galway Bay. We also work on large-scale area surveys, such as we completed a survey of the full of Lough Derg. That's a good few years ago. And we also work on the offshore wind farms in the UK. So next slide, please.
1 minute to finish, please, Finn.
So we were really, thanks Liam, we were really delighted at the end of last year to work for our client's MDM down at Kilmore Quay, where we did a full spread cable route survey from Kilmore Quay out to the 12 nautical mile limit. It was a full Irish team. We worked with our partners Fastnest Shipping, and we did a side scan sub-bottom MAG survey, as I said, all the way out to the 12 nautical mile limit. We did it at the back end of last year, and we were delighted to get it done. It was a real leap forward for us, and we did it with the support of the local community down there, and the harbour master in Kilmore Quay was essential to allow us to drag our towed arrays through the water without any of the fishing gear implications. But I suppose we're mainly focused on our main area that we work in. Next slide, please, Michelle. Is the offshore wind farms. So we've been working over in the UK since 2015 with then E.ON and now RWE, and we complete condition surveys and ad hoc pre and post intervention surveys for them on their fleet of offshore wind farms. So last year we finished, we did condition surveys at Rampion, which is their new site off the south coast just off Brighton. And we also did surveys at Humber Gateway and Robin Rigg, obviously. So we've had to really upgrade our data processing, our data storage facilities, and we did that with the help of AWS and our association here in the Portishead. And we just finished delivering the reports, chart and data for the 2021 condition survey up at Robin Rigg, which is up in the northwest of England, up at Whitehaven and Workington. So that's what we're into. Looking forward to bringing more services to our lovely clients as the year progresses. Thanks to Liam, thanks to everybody up at iHubs for facilitating us.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Finn, for that really interesting capability there. And as people will know, within Enterprise Ireland, we've been working on offshore wind for quite a while now. And what we're trying to do is get as many Irish companies as possible into the UK market with a view to bringing that capability back home when the Irish Sea projects begin to kick off. So we're going to move on to air composites. Mark McKee. Mark, floor is yours, sir.
Thanks, Liam. Sure. Thanks, Michelle. So yeah, you can move on to the next slide, Michelle. We'll start the next one. So about us, so Air Composites, we're a composite manufacturer and testing business out in Invern in the Gaeltacht. So we're primarily composite manufacturer in aerospace, space, renewable energy, and the marine industries. We split our business between build to print and serial production of parts for those industries, and probably the other half of our business is engineering services, which includes a lot of research and development and being either coordinators or partners on research and development projects. Probably more so in renewable energy than any of the rest of them. So next slide, please, Michelle. So one of the reasons that makes us a really interesting partner for that is that because we're doing all this serial production, we need to have a lot of equipment, and having that equipment can be quite handy to companies that are trying to do new and innovative stuff. So we've got some large autoclaves up to about 6 meter by 2.5 meter capacity. We've got a 6 meter 5-axis CNC machine, which is very handy for manufacturing molds and the likes, and we've a 16 meter by 5 meter by 5 meter oven as well. So there's a lot of stuff we can do, in a lot of ways we can help that way. So next slide, Michelle, please. So renewable energy manufacturing is a big part of our business. So we've done serial production of blades up to 14 meters V29 size blades, and then for smaller 6 and 15 kilowatt devices. Then we've also manufactured blades as part of projects. So we've done the 8 meter tidal turbine blade that Jamie shared in his presentation that was tested in UIG. And we try and combine our research and development activities with and align them with the commercial needs of some of our customers and partners. So next slide, please, Michelle. So some of the serial marine production that we do, just to mention, so we do small catamarans out of a recyclable polypropylene and glass fiber material. So they're a lot of those end up in France in sailing schools. So we've been doing that since 2009, and it's a stable part of our business, and it's a really interesting part. So next slide, please, Michelle. We have been involved in some research and development projects around the marine industry. Seaboat is just wrapping up this year. It was a €1.6 million Horizon 2020 project with the aim to produce a zero emissions boat. Our part of the project was to use our own patented composite powder epoxy technology, which is a novel process for manufacturing and composite items with using epoxy and powder and glass fiber. The real advantage of it is that you can co-cure and you don't need to glue the sub-elements together. So we made the hull using that technology, and what we're finding is this allows us to qualify us for more commercial opportunities. So this has led, this and other projects that we qualified and used this material on, has helped us win business very recently to manufacture retractable bow foils for a Norwegian company. They're 6 meter bow foils. They're about 3 tons each, and without the ability to co-cure the sub-elements together and get the shear loads that the greater shear load capability, because of doing that, it would have been very difficult to realize these products in composites by just gluing them together. So that's what we try and do with our R&D, is qualify us to get involved in commercial projects. So next slide, please, Michelle. So, like as I said, I think we're on 12 Horizon 2020 projects at the moment. I know for the company, we're somewhere between 25 and 30 million have accessed that level of research funding over the last 20 years, and I guess a multiple of that for projects that we've been involved in. We do some stuff with the European Space Agency as well. So next slide, please, Michelle. Yeah, so it's just some select.
Please, Mark.
Okay, some selected R&D projects. 2.7 million were coordinator for powder blade, which was the blade that Jamie tested, which was using the powder epoxy technology for larger turbine blades. Seaboat, which I talked about, also Flowtech, which was the 8-meter tidal blade you can see in the bottom right corner, and that was the one that was tested in UAG also. So next slide, please, Michelle. And ESA, the lattice structure, which again is maybe some would say not relevant for the marine industry, but that structure was manufactured to, it was just under 1,500 grams, and it was tested to 17 tons, the lattice structure in the top right corner. So again, it's technology that we see as possible to have a possible place in towers and floating wind particularly. So something we're looking at, and leap wind, leading edge protection for offshore wind turbines. So next slide, please, Michelle. So they're just some projects that we've been involved in the past, and we have a wholly owned subsidiary as well, Composites Testing Laboratory, where we do testing at sometimes breadboard, but mainly coupon level for primarily aerospace, but also a lot of the larger players in the wind industry. So we would do quite a bit of testing for LM Wind and Suzlon and Siemens Gamesa as well. So we'd hope to grow on these relationships, particularly as those companies look closer towards the west, or more at the west of Ireland, as offshore wind accelerates in these parts. Next slide, please. I think that's it. Yeah, so that's me. Yeah, no, just thanks for having us, Liam, and thanks Liam and Thurlock and Michelle for organising. We're here. We're out in Inverin. When things open up again, we'd be delighted to welcome anyone out for a visit, and reach out if there's any way we can help at all. And again, thanks for organising. We're very lucky, I think, to have such an accessible network in the west of Ireland.
Mark, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Really interesting stuff there. You see that theme of offshore wind emerging in so many people's presentations today. I've been in the marine business for 30 plus years, and this is the single greatest opportunity I think we've ever seen in Ireland in the marine sector, and we need to grab it with both hands. So yeah, that's great. Moving on to our final industrial presenter, Wood PLC, and we've got Brian O'Keefe there from Wood. Brian, floor is yours, sir.
Great, thanks very much. Perfect. So yeah, as Liam mentioned, we're Wood PLC, so based out in Parkmore. We have about 100 staff involved in all things offshore and subsea in terms of engineering, data analytics, and software engineering. I'm here today to talk about our cables and renewables team, which I lead in the Galway office. So next slide, please. So in terms of offshore wind, we provide full life cycle service to offshore wind. So looking at early phase development, site selection, route, cable routing and optimization studies, as well as energy yield assessments through design with FEED and detailed design. And then during construction, we're involved in on the project management side in terms of coordination of construction, but also providing representatives offshore during installation activities. On the operate side, we're also heavily involved particularly around failures, cable failures, and doing root cause assessments, looking at remedial solutions, and then again, when those remedial solutions go to being constructed, managing those remediation programs. Next slide, please. So we're involved in both fixed and floating wind. So looking at fixed, our main area of expertise is around the cabling. So again, the route optimization, export cable routing and landfall selection and design, cable burial risk assessments and installation methodologies. But we also have a local analysis tools for local cross-section modeling of cables. And we do quite a lot around fatigue of the cable structures, particularly at the free spans at the connection between the monopile or where the cables come out of the bottom of the monopile before they go into burial. There can often be a scour development around the bottoms of the monopiles, leading to dynamic motion of the cables in those areas. So as a result, we also work with cable protection system manufacturers to design systems to protect the cable in that area. It's a quick list of some of our recent clients. We work quite a lot with Ørsted in the UK and in Europe. We also recently, or over the last couple of years, have been working with EirGrid on the Celtic interconnector between Ireland and France, and a couple of R&D type projects around cable cross-sectional design for the Carbon Trust. Next slide, please. So in floating wind, again, we bring the same elements as fixed wind from a cable perspective, with the addition of the dynamic cable attaching the floater to the connection between the floater and the seabed. So we do design analysis and specification of the dynamic cable and the ancillary equipment that's required to ensure that it stays, it maintains its integrity through the field life. But also then we bring in our experience from oil and gas and from working with the floating structures in terms of the naval architecture area around the hull design, structural modeling, and looking at stability and global performance. So we model both the aerodynamic loading on the turbines, the hydrodynamic loading on the structures, and then look at it from a structural viewpoint, structural performance assessment. Added to that, then we do the mooring systems, so the design and specification of the mooring systems for floating turbines. Just two projects to mention there, two Irish projects that we're working on at the moment. We're supporting Simply Blue, doing a pre-feed for the Western Star project off the west coast of Ireland, looking at the hull and mooring and dynamic cables there. And we're also working with DP Energy on the Inishalga floating wind off the south coast of Ireland for cable routing and landfall assessment. So that's it for me. Nice, quick and short as the last person up.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Brian. Really interesting to see what you guys are doing. I suppose you bring an additional dimension to the size of companies in this space. That's great. Listen, I'm going to very quickly wrap up because we're over time, but not too badly. I see some really interesting emerging trends there. We're looking at things like wind. Offshore wind is really beginning to come to the fore in terms of both infrastructure in the ports and R&D capability, and even companies like Finn's doing work in the UK. It's fantastic to see. You know, we need to strengthen that capability, and both from an Irish context in terms of getting the greatest possible local content to supply chain for those projects, but also in terms of being able to build a future export industry as well. Marine bioeconomy and areas like seaweed, really interesting. Probably a very underutilized resource, and one that we need to kind of, again, get to grips with. Great to see the Park Namara facility being developed out. So yeah, look, really good thing. I think what really struck me was the level of innovative capability of the companies we've seen around the Galway area. You know, fantastic to see that R&D capability and people, you know, really getting to grips with new technologies and new capability. So in terms of further events, we will do another virtual event, a Marine Ireland Industry Network event, probably another couple of months' time, and then hopefully in Q4, when everybody's vaccinated and we're all sorted, we'll be able to get together face to face. And I think in terms of a network, there's real value in actually being able to, you know, meet people face to face. I think everybody's fairly sick of Teams at this stage. We have a couple, well, we have an event coming up, which is of note. We'll be putting up an invite to this event shortly on the website. This has been organised by the Dutch Embassy, and it's on the 15th and 16th of June. The Dutch want to showcase Dutch capability in offshore wind, but they also want to bring in Irish companies and showcase their capability to the Dutch counterparts. So that one's a real opportunity for people who are in the offshore wind industry to engage with some key Dutch players. And as you probably know, if you're involved in that industry, the Dutch have some very significant companies there, the likes of Van Oord, Boskalis, Demi, Seaway 7 and so on. Those are tier 1 contractors in the offshore wind industry, and will be critical in terms of the development of projects in the Irish Sea first, but then subsequently the floating projects in the Celtic Sea and Atlantic coast. So we will have that up on the website shortly, 15th and 16th of June. So that's an important one. As always, we have the facility to showcase events. We have the facility to showcase news. Do please send us your news stories. We do love a good marine industry, good news story. An example of that, and I have to send it on to the guys on the website, is Farah Marine, who are a startup in the space. They've just finished the CTV ready for launch in a yard in Indonesia. That CTV will be going to work in the UK industry in the short term, but subsequently coming to Ireland. So that's the kind of great news story we love to show and showcase on the website. Major thank you to all our presenters today. Thank you very much, guys. You were great and stuck to time. So thanks very much for that. As always, keep the stuff coming into the website. Have a look at the website. Send us material forward. It keeps it vibrant, keeps it going, and provides a showcase both for Irish companies, to national players, but also to international players. We do see an increasing amount of traffic from overseas, so it's important to keep the profile going there. With that, I'm going to say good luck and thank you to everybody. In particular, thank you to Michelle and Turlock in iHub who did the technology for us. It worked seamlessly, and thanks very much, guys. So to everybody, take care. Thank you very much for attending. It's been a great session. If you have any Q&A questions that you want, do send them to us, and we will we'll happily respond to them offline. Okay. Take care, everybody, and good luck.